about one of my favorite services in Azure. In this case, Azure Virtual Desktop. And I'm doing Azure Virtual Desktop, I guess, since two and a half years ago. Started with the first version of Azure Virtual Desktop, this time Windows Virtual Desktop, which was quite a challenge because there was no integration into the Azure portal, and you could only work with PowerShell, which is fine, and I really like PowerShell, but it was not so easy to left the customer or every customer only with PowerShell. And if a user should be logged off, you must type in the logoff command in PowerShell with this time the tenant, host pool name, and so on. And at this time, I built a tool which helps me that is called WVDAdmin, and that is what I will show you today as well. So my background is I'm working in a consulting company in Germany and doing Azure since 2017 or around 2017 or 16. And today I'm a Microsoft MVP for Azure, but mainly working in the Azure Virtual Desktop area. So I have a blog. Feel free to check it sometimes. I try to write everything down, which I figure out in my project, where I guess that is a good idea to share. And working with Azure Virtual Desktop is sometimes like finding an easy way or working around some challenges Microsoft maybe left. I'm sometimes searching for the correct or for a good word.
It's a journey.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no target, there's only the journey. I don't want to show what AVD is. I guess that is pretty common to have a kind of remote desktop or remote apps running on virtual machine in Azure, and all the management around is done by Microsoft. Management means, in this case, all the services which you need to provide a desktop. I think that is pretty common. So I will focus today on challenges administrators have if they want to work with Azure Virtual Desktop. And I primarily see two different challenges or big topics. That is one on the left hand, that is the deployment, how to deploy Azure Virtual Desktop session host, so the virtual machine with all the applications on top, and how to update the operation systems, and so on. So there are some challenges in the deployment process, even if you go for the golden master approach, which I like most because it's pretty straightforward and easy, but there are some hints. And on the other hand, how to work with the sessions, with the session host, like I mentioned before, how to maintain them. That is sometimes a little bit tricky, even in the Azure portal. So that are my two big topics today. And if I think about how to work with Azure Virtual Desktop, there are three approaches I see mostly. I know there are some more, like using Azure pipelines and so on. Today I'm focused to three, and we'll dig into the third part. And I think the common way to start with Azure Virtual Desktop is to use the Azure portal, where you can configure the host pools, where you also can deploy session hosts with some kind of limits, because you are sometimes fixed. If you make one configuration, then that is always stored on the host pool and you cannot change it. For example, if that doesn't change in the last weeks, if you decided to use a specific virtual machine type, then you are fixed to this specific virtual machine size and you cannot change it with the next deployment. So the experience is it's okay, it's good to start, but maybe not in a more professional environment. The second approach is to use PowerShell. And like I mentioned before, I really like PowerShell, and the script in the background, that is a script I built 3 years ago. I showed how to create an image from a golden master and to deploy it in Azure Virtual Desktop, or at this time a Windows Virtual Desktop. That is pretty cool because you can do anything, everything with PowerShell like you want. There are no limits, in my opinion. The small challenge is you must be familiar with PowerShell, and even if you are maybe having an issue, then it could be sometimes make some pressure to fix a problem only with PowerShell if you're not working every day with PowerShell. But for me, the admin experience is very high because only the sky is your limit. And the third approach is using tools, and that is what I built, I guess, two and a half years ago. That is WVDAdmin in the background. That was my approach, to skip the PowerShell part in creating host pools, session hosts, the app groups, assigning users, where you only could do this with PowerShell. And more important, I guess, is the process to grab images from virtual machines and then to roll out new session hosts automatically into host pools to provide application and desktop to the users. And I expected, after I built or started to build this tool, that it will last maybe for 3, 4, 5 months. But I'm really happy. I'm getting a lot of feedback even 2 years later. That is what I didn't expect. And I use it also in my POCs and give it to my customer because it makes it sometimes easier instead using the Azure portal, especially for the part of maintaining and deploying. Last year, or let me say, I also built some other tools around Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows Virtual Desktop, that was for scaling, for VDI, for multi-session host. And last year, I decided to bring all the parts together and build another solution on top or based on WVDAdmin to have even the fancy style or a fancy web app where you can also manage Azure Virtual Desktop and also have this parts of automation, update process which you can trigger at night, for example, and even the scaling approach, and that works pretty close to the session loaders, and it's a kind of smart way to scale your session host based on the user load and the predicted user load you will have in the next maybe 5 to 10 minutes. To be honest, I'm working on both tools. So I'm still working on WVDAdmin and even on Hydra, that is the fancy web app tool. I think the approach, or let me say, I use both tools, and sometimes it's easier to use Hydra because you don't have to sit in front of the app, the web portal to do something that can be automated. Where WWDAdmin is you have to install it on a Windows system, and to use it, you have to sit in front of the tool to work with them. But I'm working on both, and I often use both in parallel. So let me start, or let me continue with the approach how to deploy session host. And one common way is, and even for POC or for customer maybe not working in the enterprise and having SCCM or Intune or some other software deployment solution, is to go the Golden Master approach. And that means you install a Windows 10 multi-session host or a Windows 11 multi-session host in Azure as a normal virtual machine, not assigned to a host pool, so that is not an AVD. Then you can connect via RDP, the best way over an internal network, and make Windows updates, install the application updates, and so on. And if you are fine with the configuration, and that can only be done with an automation with a software deployment tool or manually. If you are fine with the virtual machine and you think that is a good master to use it as as a master for your session host, then you normally go the way to sysprep the virtual machine. And after that, you can go into the Azure portal, click on Generalize, and after that, you can grab an image from your master virtual machine. And the image can be used to deploy different session hosts. And The approach has one big challenge. If you go this way, then after the sysprep and the generalizing, you cannot start your master virtual machine again. That means if you want to do an update for the OS or for an application, maybe 2 weeks later, you have to start from the front or to build the master from the image. But then you have a copy of a copy of a copy, and it also takes a while. So I think that is not a so good approach, but that is a documented approach. What I do with WVDAdmin, and that is pretty easy, you can, and I will show it later, you can click in WVDAdmin and they generate an image from a virtual machine. Then it happens nearly in the same way, but with some differences. I have also my master virtual machine. I did my Windows updates, my application installation, and after this, if you click then in WVDAdmin, create an image file, then WVDAdmin builds an exact copy of your master virtual machine and do the sysprep part and the generalizing with this temporary one. So at the end, you also have an image. The temporary RAM cannot no longer be used and cannot start, but that is okay. That is then deleted. And if you want to update your Golden Master in the next week, you can start the original Golden Master and go through the process again. And in this case, you always store your or save your master virtual machine without modifying this. And if you grab an image with WVDAdmin or with Hydra, that is the same process in the background. There's some other parts or some other things happen. For example, if you ever sysprepped a virtual machine based on Windows 10 or 11, then maybe you have seen this error message that you cannot run sysprep because of an application is installed, but not for all users. That is an error message coming from universal apps, which runs on or can run on Windows 10 and 11. And that often, in my POC, was often an issue to grab or to sysprep a virtual machine to then later grab an image. And what WVDAdmin and Hydra does in the background is it work around this universal app, let me call it issue or challenge. And there are some other cleaning things which happens so that after a deployment, Windows will not show that the virtual machine was gracefully shut down and so on. That is also then handled in the process of creating an image from a Golden Master. Or then let me switch to a virtual machine, or first to WVDAdmin, then I can show how it looks like. So WVDAdmin is a Windows application, pretty easy, and the reason why it is a Windows application is while I got the idea to have a kind of GUI to make it easier 2 years ago, where we only had PowerShell to manage AVD or Windows Virtual Desktop, and in my opinion, using a Windows app seems to be easier, but that is not really true. But that is the reason why I decided to build fast first prototype to work with AVD and to give it to my customer and to share it with the community. So that is WVDAdmin. In my case, my tenant is configured. There's a service account behind, and if I click on Reload All, I have already done this. Then WVDAdmin reads all the Azure resources or the important Azure resources where the service account has access to, and also AVD. And if you then expand the node, you can see the workspaces or the host pools in a kind of tree view. And for example, my demo host pool that is called Design, and behind my host pool Design, there are app groups, there are the user assigned to, and there are also the session hosts in. And if I expand this, I can directly see my session host, and I can see that this session hosts are powered on because they are blue and not gray. And if I click on the session hosts node, then I can see my session hosts with a number of sessions and the state. And in this case, all session hosts are running and are available, and new sessions are allowed, and the users are working. Here that are test users. Normally the users are working then on this session host. You also can see the users in a list. If I click on sessions v2, then you can see all users of all host pools in your environment, and also can filter for user, for example, WVD 008 will show me the user. The user is connected to 2 different host pools in this case, and let me log off the user from the host pool Canada. Log off, yes, and then the user is logged off. And you can do also other things in a batch. For example, you can select multiple users, disconnect the user, log off the user, send messages, or, and that only works with one at a specific time, you can mirror or shadow the user session if you are in the same network as a session host. That is what you can do, and you can also easily create new resources like, let me add a host pool, a shared host pool, test of today. I want to create it in this resource group in West Europe. And then I should see the new host pool directly here in my list. And also can create now an app group or can configure the host pool. For example, I expect only 10 sessions per host pool, per first load balancer, and then I'm ready with this host pool. I think more interesting is a view in the case of building an image to check the Azure node. And the Azure node shows you the virtual machines, images. I already have image galleries, or it's now named compute galleries, and so on. And I have in virtual machines, there is one virtual machine called TAVD clean. T is in my environment for template. So that means a master. That is not part of AVD, but a normal Windows 10 multi-session virtual machine. And what I normally do before when I try to test a new software and I'm not sure if I want to go back, then I can, for example, and that is what I often use, I can create a snapshot, and that is pretty easy. You can click snapshot create, it asks, is it okay? And then it creates a snapshot, and that takes only a few seconds. It's done. It was 3 to 4 seconds. And then as the snapshot is made, and if I later test it in an application and I'm not fine with this, I can click write the virtual machine, and that works for all virtual machine, independent if that are Windows 10 or server systems, or it would even work for Linux. Yeah, because it's on it's independent from the OS. Then I can go back with snapshot restore, and then I get the list of images built for this virtual machine. That is also what you can do in Azure, in the Azure portal natively. But it's sometimes tricky if you want to roll back an image. Roll back in snapshot, then you have to go into the Azure portal, to the snapshot, create a virtual disk from the snapshot, go to the virtual machine, deattach the old disk, attach the new disk, and that is then happens here directly. If I select now one snapshot, that is what I have prepared at around 3 p.m., then it will revert the disk to this specific time. So I think that is not needed. I have my virtual machine running. That is this one, TAVD clean. And what I sometimes do, even in demos, is to install application. And for sure, I'm doing Windows updates, and application was denied. And that is a nice tool which can be used to select some application, for example, Chrome. Or let me use one of my favorite. I guess that is what everybody used in demos, Notepad++. Get Unite, then I get an executable, and I have to trust this service, for sure, to be honest. Takes a while. And this installs all my selected application, in this case only not Notepad++, but I'm able to select more than one application, and then it installs all selected application in a row. And after this, if I'm fine with my virtual machine, and this virtual machine is also domain joined so that I'm able to test my backend environment with my application, then I would shut down the virtual machine, shut down. I shut it down inside of Windows to make sure that it comes down really nice and smooth. And after this, I can go to WWD Admin, right-click the virtual machine, and say, create a template image. And the only thing I have to do is give it a name and select the target resource group. I use WVD templates, and that is all. And then I click capture, and then we can see in the log what happens. It first deallocates the virtual machine, and after that, it creates a snapshot. From the snapshot, it builds a disk. With the disk, it builds another virtual machine, and that is then exactly like my golden master. And then it starts the copy, and it then injects a script to this virtual machine, doing all this optimizing stuff, and then at the end sysprep. And if that is runs fine, the virtual machine is shut down, the image is grabbed, and the copy of my master is deleted. So at the end, I keep my original VM, and I have then an image in my subscription. Here's some images. Like you can see, I made some tests. And that's pretty fast. I would say that would take around 5 to 10 minutes to grab an image from a normal virtual machine. That's also that could also be a cool thing, and let me mention that. Normal Windows 10 or 11 has a size of 128 gigabyte, so the disk is always 128 gigabyte. But in some cases, it could be cool to make it smaller. For example, there are a disk type in Azure called ephemeral disk that are disks only existing on the hypervisor of Azure, but there's some limitation in size. And to work around, you could go to your and I have done this with my virtual machine before, to your golden master, and you can resize the disk to 64 gigabyte or 32 gigabytes. And if you want to do this manually, that is a huge process. You have to copy the disk to a storage account, shrink then the disk, copy the last 512 sectors of the disk to another position, downloading that a little bit complicated, and that is pretty easy. It takes 20-30 minutes, but that is a one-time process. And after that, all images based of this master are then 64 gigabyte instead of 128 gigabyte. So we let this run, and that is also new. It shows the name and then the jobs running in the background. So here's one background job, creating an image that is running. But we can then use another image to deploy a session host in our test of today host pool we created before. And that is the same approach, right-click, roll out session host from image. And that is what I prepared, especially for today. The lower part here is the user account who is able to join the virtual machine to a domain with a password and all the stuff that was all stored on my computer, the password encrypted for sure. And the other part, that is what I have to select it every time I try to make a rollout, and that is now also stored. So I can change this if I'm not fine with this. For example, okay, the other is not ready, but let me use another image. The host pool is selected because I right-clicked on this host pool, and it would then roll out virtual machine with the naming schema avd-prod- hashtags that will count up the number. I want to have 3 of them. The virtual network is this one, West Europe VNet, the WVD, virtual machine size 3v2. And let me save some money, standard HD in this case, and then I click on start rollout, and it will now try to roll, or not try, I'm pretty sure it will work. It will now roll out this three new virtual machines, session hosts, into my subscription, into this resource group, will add them to the host pool and to the domain I have configured here. And I also can use AAD only if I want to do that. But mainly, I see companies doing the native Active Directory because they have an application needing some backend stuff. So this will take a while. And let me show you what I do sometimes as well. For example, another host pool. Let me show this one. If I click on session hosts, I can see all the hosts like I shown before on the right side. And what I can do here for maintenance reason, I can also select several hosts. I can filter by name. And then I can disable log on, enable log on. I can log off all the users, start, stop the virtual machine, and I can remove, delete the session host, and that also deletes the virtual machines at the background and also the NICs and the disks. But what I also can do is I have a kind of script extension. You can select here scripts, and you can add scripts and modify scripts to run specific tasks. For example, running Windows updates. That is what I can select here. Can click on Run Script. I have to say OK, and then it injects the scripts in the system context to the session host. And in this case, it would then trigger a Windows update to run. In this case, it's not a good idea to do that when users are running on top on this virtual machine, but that is an example. You can also do, for example, configure the screen capture protection, a feature of Azure Virtual Desktop that is only a rec key, which is then set via a script on this virtual machine on this session host. And that is pretty cool to do maintenance job, or to if you have an issue in your environment, to run a specific action on multiple hosts at the same times. And the scripts are stored in the program files folder of WVDAdmin, so you can copy that and modify that to have more scripts or other scripts in here. That is cool. And also cool is, in my opinion, sorry for that, you can go, if you go to the Azure node, you have the same view on virtual machines. And that shows you all virtual machines and all resource group and subscription where the service account has access to. And you have the same functionality. For example, you can select and filter to the session host. You can start, stop the virtual machine, and you can also run scripts. So that is also usable to maintain or to batch process actions on virtual machine which are not part of Azure Virtual Desktop. And what I have used in the last time, we had some issues in West Europe where a specific virtual machine size was not you could not start or create. You couldn't start a virtual machine of a specific type while this resource was no longer available while other users are using this kind of virtual machine. And in AVD with autoscaling, that prevents from virtual machine to be started, and that results in issues for the end users. And to fast change the disk type to another one which was available, you can do it step by step for each virtual machine in the portal, or you could select a different virtual machine and select change size, and then it would change the size of the virtual machines in parallel for all selected virtual machines. That's sometimes very helpful. So let us see the jobs are running. So the image creation is still running, and building of the new virtual machine are also running. And there are a lot of other things in WVDAdmin. Right click, then you can see what you can do. I talked about the snapshot, shrinking the disks, removing a customer managed key. That is not so easy if you do it manually. And one thing you could, let me show this on the session hosts. Natively, you cannot move a session host from one host pool to the other host pool. That is what you also can do with WVDAdmin. I built this primarily for migration from the older WVD to the newer AVD version Microsoft provided 1.5 years ago or 2 years ago. That is what you can do here, moving session hosts and also keeping or removing the user assignment. So I think that is what I can show you here. Feel free to test it. It's a completely free solution I built for the community, for me and for my colleagues. That can be, in some cases, very helpful. And we can see now here, this 3 session hosts are finished. They are doing now a last reboot. And after that, if I click on refresh, we will see the new session host here ready for the user. And yeah, to be honest, I have to create an application group first so that the user can see the new environment, the new session host. That is what I have done with WVDAdmin. And like I mentioned before, I then decided to bring parts together and to build the fancy web app I wanted to build in my first try, because I was not sure that how long does it takes. And that is my project that is called Hydra, and that is based on WVDAdmin. So a lot of WVDAdmin code is in Hydra, but Hydra has not all of the feature of WVDAdmin. For example, you cannot create a host pool here, but you can work with the host pools and with the sessions, and that in an automated way. And Hydra is built to work multi-tenancy. And for example, I have here one tenant with the different host pools. Here's our test of today that that is automatically refreshed every 30 seconds. So that is the reason why we can see it here. And I have also another tenant or another 2 tenant showing the other host pools. And you can directly see all the information of the host pools in your tenant. For example, here, my host pool design, there are 29 sessions. The capacity is 35 sessions based on the 7 session hosts running. And that is a load of 82% of the available capacity. If you click here in, you can also see your session host, a little bit more fancy even with the load. Each session host can handle up to 5 user session, and you can see here this host are in full load, and we can see here the line chart showing the capacity that is coming from the session host. At this time, we had 2 session hosts running. Each can handle 5 sessions, so the capacity is 10. And then I logged on automatically some users to show how Hydra autoscale starts the session host to provide the needed capacity. And it uses a kind of prediction or do some math in the background, and it extrapolate the number of users you would have here. So that is the reason why Hydra provided more session hosts or started more session hosts, and then it had seen, okay, there are not so much user coming like expected, and then the session hosts are shut down to handle the user session. The autoscale engine from Hydra can not only start and stop session host, that happens for sure. In my configuration, let me show you my configuration, my autoscale configuration. I defined, normally I would do that, or that is a kind of schedule between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. normally in the morning, but I extended that to show it here because we are a little bit later. I defined that I want to have at least 2 session hosts running and always 4 sessions left in capacity for the next user. And that is what happens in my environment. Hydra created first. I haven't shown this. And I said, please don't start the 2 session hosts. Build this session host based on a rollout configuration I have on a host pool level here. And in the morning, or while I prepared my test, Hydra deployed 2 session hosts that are this one with this icon that are temporary session hosts, especially built to handle the first load in the morning. And the user connected first to this session host because all other session hosts were switched off. And then so that the capacity is not enough, and then it started existing session hosts to handle the user load. That are the normal session hosts, looking like, without this icon. And after a while, because I only had 1, 2, 3 normal session hosts, existing session hosts, Hydra has seen that that is not enough to handle the expected user load, and then additional session hosts were created, also based on the rollout profile, And if this session hosts are no longer used, let me show that I could log off all the users here. Then Hydra will not deallocate the session host, it will delete this temporary one. And the other one are then deallocated. So if all users are logged off, I'm left only with the 3 session hosts and the other disappeared. And in the next morning, they will appear, or the 2 will appear, and maybe if I need more, other will appear. That is one option. And what I think what is pretty cool is virtual machine is the one thing to save money. And the other thing is or are the disks. And let me show that in one slide. You know that you have in Azure different disk types. For example, the standard HDD, the slowest one, costs for 128 gigabytes around 5 euros. The standard SSD around 10 euros, and that is what Microsoft recommend. Premium SSD, much faster, cost around 20 euros, so 4 times higher. But the bad thing is you have to pay the disk 24/7, the whole time the virtual machine exists, even if the virtual machine is running or not. And what I have first built into WVDAdmin, and in WVDAdmin that is configurable based on a tag on a virtual machine. But in Hydra, you can say on the host pool configuration, auto change this type, and that is the type of the type the virtual machine should have if the virtual machine is running. And what Hydra does, if you start a virtual machine or if Autoscale starts a virtual machine, it first change the disk type to premium, start the virtual machine, and in the opposite direction, it will deallocate the virtual machine and then change back the disk to HDD, to the cheapest one. And I have this also configured on this host pool monitor. This virtual machine is off. Let me switch to this virtual machine. And this virtual machine has right now a disk type HDD. And if I now start the virtual machine or Autoscale starts the virtual machine, in the background, it will first switch the disk to premium and then start the machine. And that takes around 2 to 3 seconds. So it's pretty fast. I'm pretty sure that Microsoft is doing this performance thing, not physical. They do that with a kind of policy or SLA. HDD, let me refresh and then cross my finger, it's now premium. And that is cool. And I figured out in an environment, in a real environment, that was a customer having around 80 session hosts. They are using this feature. They save more than 50% of the storage cost, only using this little feature, switching the disk type on start and stop. And that is pretty cool, I guess, because it works so smoothly and easily. It's also a good point. Maybe you know it if you sometimes delete some virtual machine and have forgotten to delete also the disk. That is also could be a cost point. And for that, I have in WWDAdmin. Let me once switch back. That is what I sometimes do. Clean up unused resources. That is first preview, and then it will show if I have in my environment unused NICs and unused disks. And this disk, not assigned to a virtual machine, cost me money. The NICs are for free, but if you have a lot of NICs in your environment not connecting to a virtual machine, they all claiming an IP. And if you have a small IP subnet, you could be run out of IPs. So that is what I sometimes do. I go to clean up unused resource, and that deletes this unused, unattached NICs and disks. Oh, let me check the time. Also, a good point is I mentioned that before, that I had some struggle with this virtual machine sites, which was no longer available in West Europe. In Hydra, you can define a host, a rollout definition, and that looks nearly exactly like WVDAdmin. You could also say this is my favorite virtual machine size on this host pool. And if this is not available, Hydra will automatically change this virtual machine size to the alternative configured size, and then starts the virtual machine. And that is pretty cool because you're not running so fast in this problem that your favorite virtual machine size is not available because it switched automatically to the other one. Later, you have to switch back manually with Hydra or WWD Admin, but it brings up your virtual machine in the morning. And for sure, you have all the user session in. You can filter, you can message, log off. You also could, if it needed, delete the FS Logics profile. And that is then done with a service account in the background as well, so that you help that the user don't need the permission to do that. And that is pretty new. You can see here. Let me first. I have one session open with my favorite load test tool, the fishbowl. Where's my fishbowl? And I killed my fishbowl. There's my fishbowl. And that is an example that a user have a higher load in the environment. And what you can do with Hydra is the name of the user. I didn't see it. WVD10. That is a user, I guess, that is running in the Canada environment. And with this icon, I can see in real time the process the user runs in the session. And that is here, for example, this is MS Edge, 32% CPU load. That is the memory load. And if I click on terminate right now, it directly kicks and comes back, directly kicks the processes of the user. And that is pretty cool because the session host is connected, and that is optional, with the Hydra instance, and using, what is the name for that? A real-time protocol. The interaction is pretty fast, so that I can see here the CPU and memory directly and can directly kill if one application is going or running crazy in a user environment. And that can be helpful even if if an application is no longer usable, user disconnect and try to log on again and get exactly this crashed session back. And that prevent that. And what I also have in, to make it short, the scripts I have in WVDAdmin, that is what I also have in here. For example, there are some pre-built scripts and some others. For example, here my build OS install Windows updates. If I click on that, I can see it in a kind of Visual Studio Code that triggers Windows update. That is what I can execute on a session host. Or, cooler, a collection is a collection of scripts. Or, and I have here one prepared, install Windows update and shut down. And if I expand this, you can see I have different steps. In this case, I switch stray mode on. I log off users. If users are collected, I start the virtual machine. If the virtual machine is not started, I run then the script itself to install Windows Update, doing a restart to apply the Windows Update, and then deallocate the session host, and stray mode off means the user can then connect on the next day. And that is what you can do and execute directly if you select session hosts. Here are the scripts and the scripts collection. Windows Update was shut down. Also not a good idea to do it in when users are running on top, but let me do that. So it now goes through the processes. We have seen the different step, logging off the user, starting the virtual machine, which is not necessary, and then run Windows updates. That is one way, or what I like to do is I also can schedule the scripts. And I do this for this host pool. It's enabled, and I run this script collection with this different step and Windows update on all session hosts on 10 session hosts at the same time, and if one ready, the next session host is applied with this collection, and I do that on each Sunday, 1 a.m. in the morning, and that is one way to update your host pool in a really easy way. And there are some other things you can do. For example, you could also configure, or if you are having VDI host pools, you can also define that the virtual machine disk types, which normally is automatically changed, you could also do that on a specific time. Disk to premium, disk to HDD, if you want to do that. And that could be, or is really powerful. And you have the image builder in, and that works exactly like in WVDAdmin with some advantage. You can also define or can build an image, and in the rollout configuration, you can say, or you can first name your normal image, or you can say, please use the image, the newest image, based on this virtual machine I built. So we created an image before for this virtual machine, and with that configuration, I don't have to go into this rollout configuration. I can directly click on plus and deploy to additional virtual machine, and this virtual machine are then deployed based on the newest image I made. That is comparable to this image gallery, but that is based on normal images, because that is a little bit easier if you don't need the image available in other location. But that is what you also can do using image gallery, compute galleries. And let me check the time. I think I'm not complete. I could take a little bit longer, but yeah, let me say thank you. And if you feel free to test it, I'm happy about feedback, and I'm continuously working on both tools, on WWDAdmin and also on Hydra. And let me know what you think, or if you have question, I'm happy to answer. I try to answer everything. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Marcel, for your very interesting session and the very great tools you contributed to the community. It's amazing what you've created, really.
Thanks a lot.